हरे कृष्णा जय जगन्नाथ। तो आज हम पढ़िबा एक्चुअली ओडिसा रे जति वाइल्ड लाइफ सेंचुरीज अछि, नेशनल पार्क अछि, बायोस्फीयर रिजर्व, टाइगर रिजर्व, एलिफेंट रिजर्व, रामसर साइट्स। तो ता विषय में फुल डिस्कस करदो। ऑलमोस्ट एवरी ईयर ओएस ओडिसा जति ओपीएससी एग्जाम्स अछि सेठी गोटे ओडिसा स्पेसिफिक क्वेश्चन जे आसुची दि तीनटा आसे सेथरो एनवायरनमेंट रिलेटेड गोटे क्वेश्चन निहाती थाए। तो हम जदि सब लास्ट लाइक आस्ता तो बालुखंड वाइल्ड लाइफ सेंचुरी कोथिला तो किछि तो हमें जानि थाउ किछि किछि टिके डिफिकल्ट माने कोन एते सो फेमस एरिया नो सेटा हम जान थाउ तो ता विषय में प्रॉपर्ली डिस्कस कर दो। ओके सो लेट्स स्टार्ट। ओके फर्स्ट हमरे देखि दो बायोडायवर्सिटी कंजर्वेशन कोन काहे करा होची एवरीथिंग। सो व्हेन वी कंजर्व एंड प्रोटेक्ट द होल इकोसिस्टम, conserve and protect the whole ecosystem, its biodiversity at all levels is protected है ना। तो बायोडायवर्सिटी तो जानते हो जो कि बेसिकली फ्लोरा फौना एंड तांक भीतर जो रिलेशन रहची सेटा को लाइक बायोडायवर्सिटी होची। तो पूछो कि व्हेन वी कंजर्व एंड प्रोटेक्ट द होल इकोसिस्टम, its biodiversity at all levels is protected. Example, we save the entire forest to save the tiger. We save the entire forest to save the tiger. Because tiger पे गोटे पूरा प्रॉपर फूड चेन होगा दरकार सेठी ग्रास होगा दरकार ग्रास को खाइबे सेठी बिकॉज़ तुम जो हर्बिवोरस अछंती लाइक डियर्स एंड योर गोट्स लाइक दैट। तो समान को तापे तांको फूड चेन रे के रहबो तांको ऊपर टाइगर्स। सो तो द एंटायर फॉरेस्ट विल बी प्रोटेक्टेड टू सेव द टाइगर ना। दिस अप्रोच इज कॉल्ड इन सिटू कंजर्वेशन just because the tiger is living in his natural environment, so on site or in his house, right, you can say natural environment conservation. So that's why it is called in situ, on site. However, when there are situations where an animal or plant is endangered or threatened, तो यदि तांको नंबर्स बहुत कम रथिबो आ तांको कुछ प्रॉब्लम्स होतो नेचुरल एनवायरनमेंट रे लाइक तांकर थ्रेटेंड थे माने कोन तांकर नंबर्स खत्म सरी जीवार संभावना थिबो। So there needs urgent measures to save it from extinction. So that's why they are conserved in the ex situ or like offsite environment, or you can say artificially created environment. So that's will be called ex situ conservation. So in situ means to conserving animals in their own environment in their natural homes, and ex situ means to ताको कोन ताको नेचुरल एनवायरनमेंट आनी कि गोटे आर्टिफिशियल एनवायरनमेंट जू एंड लाइक जंती नंदनकानन अछि ओडिसा रो तो से भलिया जगह रे ताको रखि कि कंजर्व करिवा ताको अछि एक्स सिटू कंजर्वेशन। ओके so you can see your biodiversity conservation can be divided into in situ and ex situ. In situ you can see natural home, ex situ is artificial home. In situ conservation as well your wildlife sanctuary, national park, biosphere reserves, reserve forest, protected forest. And ex situ you can see seed bank, zoo, botanical garden like that. So again, it is explained in detail in situ conservation. So in situ conservation is the on-site conservation. Natural home you can see on-site conservation of genetic resources in natural populations of plant and animal species. So on-site conservation of what? Genetic resources in natural populations of plant and animal species. So in India, ecologically unique and biodiversity rich regions are legally protected. तो कैंडी लीगली प्रोटेक्टेड कराई छै ताको बायोस्फीयर रिजर्व रिकॉग्नाइज करिया करी नेशनल पार्क sanctuaries reserve forest protected forest nature reserves like that. So currently India has 18 biosphere reserves. India कितना biosphere reserves अछि 18 and 104 national parks, 104 national parks and more than 500 wildlife sanctuaries. Okay, so 18 biosphere reserves, remember this thing. Plantation, cultivation, grazing, felling trees, hunting and poaching are prohibited in biosphere reserves, national parks and sanctuaries. तो को दिन से prohibited होचे plantation हला रही like कुछ natural tree न लगे कि बाहर या किसी trees like plantation में दिखा जाएगा tea plantation kind of thing, rubber tea, cultivation and your grazing, felling of trees, hunting and poaching, these all things activities are prohibited. And there is a protected area network in India, National Board for Wildlife. So there is a you can say legal entity, National Board for Wildlife. ताको चेयर की करछन्ती Prime Minister of India, provides for policy framework for wildlife conservation in the country. So National Board for Wildlife को किए चेयर करछन्ती Prime Minister of India, ता काम कोन policy बनेवा for what wildlife conservation in the country. National Wildlife Action Plan 2002 ରୁ 2016 adopted ହେଇଥିଲା के 2002 ରେ that emphasize on the people's participation and their support for wildlife conservation. So people's participation their support ପାଇଁ ଗୋଟେ plan ଥିଲା କଣ National Wildlife Action Plan. So that is the Biosphere Reserve and National Park ର difference କଣ mainly Biosphere Reserve ରେ तमरो people ମାନଙ୍କ involvement ଥାଏ जोटा National Park रे नଥାଏ. Reserve and protected forest, what are those? So you can see at the present reserve forest and protected forest differ in one important way. Right to all activities like hunting, grazing, etc. in reserve forests are banned. So reserve forest hela kono setre jo hunting and grazing like kind of things are banned unless specific orders are issued otherwise. So generally banned thai jodi tamko sedi hunting and grazing pai specially allocate order jaw padiyo, permission jaw padiyo. But in protected area, right, like hunting and grazing activities are sometimes given to communities living on the fingers of the forest. I'm sorry. So basically, hunting, grazing are allowed. Okay. Highlighter. So protected areas mainly reserve forest basically remember reserve forest hunting grazing are not allowed unless permission extra permission basically. But protected areas communities living in the fringes of the forest, they hunting grazing activities are allowed to sustain their livelihood from the forest resource and products. The first reserve forest in India was Satpura National Park in Madhya Pradesh. Remember this thing? The Pratham reserve forest in India was Satpura National Park in Madhya Pradesh. So typically reserve forests are often upgraded to status of wildlife sanctuary. Generally reserve forest को upgrade कर दिया जाए later wildlife sanctuaries हिसाब रे और wildlife sanctuary पर actually national park ही जाती. So basically reserve forest सबुठु तळे होची protected forest जोटी कि hunting and grazing सेठी का जो आखपाख लोकन को allowed अछि. तापर reserve forest जेटा you can see here तापर reserve forest तापर wildlife sanctuary तापर national park. Okay, so national park, wildlife sanctuary, reserve forest, protected forest, you can see. So this is the higher grade of protection. National park is a higher grade of protection. Then uske wildlife sanctuary, reserve forest, protected forest. Wildlife sanctuary, wildlife refuges. So wildlife sanctuaries or wildlife refuges are home to various endangered species. Wildlife sanctuaries or wildlife refuges are home to various endangered species. They are safe from hunting, predation, or competition. They are safe from hunting, predation, or competition. Okay, so जेमती कि तमरो हम देखिते protected forest ऊपर तमरो अधिक protection मिलछि को reserve forest तापर wildlife sanctuary. So basically एतरे forest होय तो किछि endangered species भी थांदी और सेठी hunting, predation, competition is allowed. They are सेठी माने से थ्रू एठी माने कोन hunting नाको try to safe माने hunting हबनी, predation हबनी वगैरह वगैरह. They are safeguarded from extinction in their natural habitat. Certain rights of people living inside the sanctuary could be permitted. There is a sanctuary like community indigenous tribes and all. Rights hunting, grazing, protect permission grazing, firewood collection trials are allowed but strictly regulated. Grazing and firewood collection of white tribals. Communities, mainly tribals, mainly around the jungle area. So grazing for their animals and firewood collection for like fuel cooking purpose fine. So these are allowed but regulated. Settlements not allowed. So wildlife settlements are not allowed. So exception tribal settlements do exist. Constant efforts are made to relocate them. So already जदि homes तो relocation provisions like that. A sanctuary can be promoted to national park. Paki sanctuary to our higher grade protection code national park. So same reserve forest can be promoted to wildlife sanctuary and wildlife sanctuary can be promoted to national park. So there are more than 500 wildlife sanctuaries in India. Currently, Odisha basically 519 Odisha. Now let's see. Coming to the main part of our discussion, that is the Odisha wildlife sanctuary 19 So first you can see तो हमें जो establishing year हिसाब रे really एटा बना है छी. Okay, जो नो आरिहंत नो स्टेट बुक ओडिशा तार रेफरेंस नहीं कि एटा स्लाइड टा बनाई छी. So you can see here Balderrama Wildlife Sanctuary, Balderrama Wildlife Sanctuary establishing in 1962, area 304 square kilometers. So area तुमको मन रखा दरकार नहीं. You can remember just your wildlife sanctuary और तुमको location, okay, district मतलब. तो संबलपुर डिस्ट्रिक्ट रे अछि तमरा बडरामा वाइल्डलाइफ सेंचुरी 1962 रे एस्टाब्लिश हैला. देन 1975 रे भितरकनिका वाइल्डलाइफ सेंचुरी केंद्रापड़ा. सो भितरकनिका केंद्रापड़ा समस्त जानते हो. भितरकनिका नेशनल पार्क भी गोटे अछि. We will discuss that in next slides. So बडरामा तमे देखलो कोडे संबलपुर, भितरकनिका तमे देखलो your केंद्रापड़ा. Then सातकोशिया very famous. सातकोशिया गोल्ड तमर जो महानदी रे अछि 1976 रे तम तीनटा डिस्ट्रिक्ट अछि सेटा बेसिकली अनुगुल, बौद्ध एंड कटक. तो महानदी रो गोटे लाइक एरिया जो सातकोशिया गोल्ड कहजे सेठी तमरो क्रोकोडाइल पॉपुलेशन भी काफी अछंती. So सेतरे कोको डिस्ट्रिक्ट आछो सेटा मेनली अनुगुल, देन बौद्ध एंड कटक. So अनुगुल, बौद्ध एंड कटक रे हम आछो सातकोशिया गोल्ड वाइल्डलाइफ सेंचुरी. हदगढ़ वाइल्डलाइफ सेंचुरी very famous, established year 1978. It comes in Keonjhar and Mayurbhanj district. Keonjhar and Mayurbhanj, mainly Keonjhar रे आछी, Keonjhar रे Mayurbhanj district रे. नंदनकानन वाइल्डलाइफ सेंचुरी, नंदनकानन वाइल्डलाइफ सेंचुरी 1979. तो तुम जानते हो नंदनकानन तमरा ये भी अछि, जू भी अछि, हैला, zoological park. So नंदनकानन वाइल्डलाइफ सेंचुरी खोर्धा डिस्ट्रिक्ट आछी भुवनेश्वर. सिमलीपाल वेस्ट वाइल्डलाइफ सेंचुरी 1979 established. Remember 1979. It comes in Mayurbhanj district. So Simlipal wildlife sanctuary kete area thila 1354.3. So Simlipal is a very unique case. Simlipal re tomro Simlipal is a wildlife sanctuary, Simlipal is a national park, Simlipal is a biosphere reserve, Simlipal is a tiger reserve as well. And even this tiger reserve comes under the Mayurbhanj elephant reserve. So 5 things you can remember. Then comes Baisipalli wildlife sanctuary 1981 established. District is Nayagarh. So just remember the name and districts. Badrama, ଆମେ ଦେଖିଲୁ ସମ୍ବଲପୁର, ଭିତରକନିକା ଦେଖିଲୁ କୋଉଠି, କେନ୍ଦ୍ରାପଡ଼ା, ସାତକୋଶିଆ ଦେଖିଲୁ, ଅନୁଗୁଳ, ବୌଦ୍ଧ and କଟକ, ହଦଗଡ଼ ଆମେ ଦେଖିଲୁ କେଉଁଝର and ମୟୂରଭଞ୍ଜ, ନନ୍ଦନକାନନ, ଖୋର୍ଦ୍ଧା, ଶିମଲିପାଲ, ମୟୂରଭଞ୍ଜ, ବାଇଶିପଲ୍ଲୀ is Nayagarh 1981 established. Then comes Kottagarh. So Baisipalli, Kottagarh, Badrama, these are not very famous names, so you should remember these things. So Badrama देखलो कोड संबलपुर है, Baisipalli देखलो नयागढ़ है, Kottagarh है ला कंधमाल. So K you can something you can remember. Kottagarh region, कंधमाल. Then Chandaka Dampara, Chandaka तो तुम सब जानते हो, your भुवनेश्वर में अच्छी 1982 established Khurda and Cuttack. Then comes Khalasoni. हम उड़ा देखलो Kottagarh, उड़ा देखला Khalasoni. So Khalasoni 1982 रे Khalasoni कोड अच्छी. That's in Sambalpur as well. So Sambalpur में देख लो ये Badrama थिला and it डासलो तो Khalasoni. Then Balukhand Konark. So last year OS prelims question Balukhand सेट एक्चुअली कोणार्क देना था, कोणार्क देखले जଣା पड़े था. So खाली Balukhand देखला. So Balukhand it's in Puri. So basically Balukhand से देखला actually कि हाँ yes माने से their flagship species कंजर को अच्छी सेटा देखला. और सब वाइल्डलाइफ सेंचुरी नेशनल पार्क की फ्लैगशिप स्पीशीज था और जोड़ा कि पर्टिकुलरली कंजर्व करा जाए. तासे तो अन्य पॉपुलेशन भी थांती अन्य एनिमल्स. कुलडीहा is very famous. Kuldhiha wildlife sanctuary comes under Mayurbhanj elephant reserve as well. Hala Kuldhiha, your Simlipal tiger reserve and Hadagarh. ये तीनटा को मिलके basically Mayurbhanj elephant reserve. So Kuldhiha wildlife sanctuary तुम्हारा mainly Nilagiri area रहा है, Balashore district. Okay. So Balukhand देखले पूरी, Khalasoni देखले कोडी संबलपुर, Khalasoni संबलपुर, Kuldhiha, Balashore. Then Debrigarh wildlife sanctuary 1985 established. It's also Sambalpur. तो संबलपुर में तीन टाइप के देखले देवरीगढ़ गोटे हला, खड़ासुनी हला, गोटे बडरामा देखली. खड़ासुनी देवरीगढ़ एंड यार खड़ासुनी देवरीगढ़ और कौन देखलो बडरामा. हला बालूखंड देखलो, कुलडिया देखलो, लखरी वैली वाइल्डलाइफ सेंचुरी इट्स इन गजपति डिस्ट्रिक्ट. लखरी वैली वो डिस्ट्रिक्ट असला गजपति डिस्ट्रिक्ट. देन चिलिका तो जानते हो, चिलिका योर लगून सॉल्ट वाटर और ब्रैकिश लगून यू कैन से. सो चाहे नळबण भी अछि जोटा कि गोटे लाइक बर्ड्स माने आसी सेठी वेली रेस्ट करंदी विंटर सीजन में. सो नळबण हला तमरा अछि को तीन बेसिकली चिलिका तीनटा डिस्ट्रिक्ट लागि अछि, खोर्धा, पुरी एंड गंजाम. खोर्धा, पुरी एंड गंजाम. देन कम्स सुनाबेड़ा वाइल्डलाइफ सेंचुरी. सुनाबेड़ा वाइल्डलाइफ सेंचुरी 1988 एस्टैब्लिश. सुनाबेड़ा कोड अछि नुआपड़ा रे अछि. नुआपड़ा हला सुनाबेड़ा नुआपड़ा लाइक डिफरेंट. करलापत लास्ट ईयर बहुत न्यूज थिला बिकॉज़ एडी किछि एलिफेंट पॉपुलेशन कर डेथ हेला हला. So को कारण रो elephants पर डेथ इला करला पटे तुम कमिशन कर परियो. So that was established in 1992. कोडा सेडा कोलाहांडी रहछि. So कोलाहांडी रे करला पत खला सुनी कोड देखला हम यो संबलपुर आउडे कोनतला कोलडीहा देखलो केरे जोडा छै. बालेश्वर कोटागढ़ थिला गोटे कोटागढ़ that's in that is also in Kandhamal I think. Yeah, कोटागढ़ in Kandhamal. करला पत हम देखलो कोलाहांडी. गाहिर मथा very important गाहिर मथा. That is the like जो आरीबड़ा हुए तुम्हारा olive readily turtle, right? So गाहिर मथा तुम्हारा सेटा भी या कहाँ पाकर होची भीतर कनिका पाकर ही होची 1997 केंद्रापड़ा डिस्ट्रिक्ट. तो केंद्रापड़ा डिस्ट्रिक्ट आसे तुम्हारा गाहिर मथा वाइल्ड सेंचुरी established in 1997. कपिलास वाइल्ड सेंचुरी कपिलास 2011 ढेंकानाल में ଗୋଟେ famous spiritual place you can say as well. कपिलास वाइल्ड सेंचुरी होची. हेलो. Next coming to national park. So 19टा हमें wildlife sanctuary discuss करूँ ओडिशा में जो 19टा wildlife sanctuary अच्छी तब से discuss करूँ. So try to please remember their districts. National parks are reserved areas reserved for wildlife where they can freely use the habitats and natural resources. So जब तक हम discuss करते हैं national park के wildlife sanctuary को अधिक greater protection दिया जाए. Conservation. The difference between a sanctuary and national park mainly lies in the vesting of rights of people living inside. Unlike a sanctuary जेमती हम डिस्कस करथु कि सेठी जो कम्युनिटी मान रहउछन तांको किछि लाइक ट्रेडिशनल राइट्स अलाउड इन ग्रेजिंग एंड firewood collection like that. So certain rights can be allowed in sanctuary but in a national park no rights are allowed. So national park is very strict. There is a core area अच्छी buffer area. The core area रे कहाँ किछि प्रकार activities allowed no. No grazing of any livestock shall also be permitted inside national park. No grazing of any livestock also be permitted. In the sanctuary, the chief wildlife warden may regulate or control or prohibit it. But sanctuary depends upon the like level like protect or dependency of the tribes living nearby. So say हिसाब से chief wildlife warden अच्छी से सब स्टेट में थांती सम्माने कम करिवे किसी प्रकार का concession दे करिवे. Then what is eco-sensitive zone? You can see here the National Wildlife Action Plan. Today हम discuss कर लो National Wildlife Action Plan 2016 co-minister also Minister of Environment, Forest and Climate Change stipulated that state governments should declare land falling within 10 km boundaries. So National Wildlife Action Plan कहूची कि जो land 10 km boundary अंदर रहउची National Park and Wildlife Sanctuary रे ताको eco fragile zones और eco sensitive zones के declare करो. Under what? Under the Environment Protection Act 1986. So according to National Wildlife Action Plan जोड़ा 2016 बजे एस्टेब्लिश हेतला कि से गोटे सजेशन देतला कि गवर्नमेंट शुड डिक्लेयर व्हाट द लैंड और जो अच्छी नेशनल पार्क एंड वाइल्ड लाइफ सेंचुरी तारो चारि पाखरे जो 10 किलोमीटर एरिया को इको सेंसिटिव जोन हिसाब रे डिक्लेयर करे को सजेशन देतला. So the purpose of the eco sensitive zone was to provide more protection to the parks by acting as a shock absorber or transition zone. So eco sensitive zone गोटे तुम ट्रांजिशन जोन और shock absorber मिले act करियो. Eco-sensitive zones would minimize forest depletion and man-animal conflict. Right? The protected areas are based on core and buffer model of management. So basically, the protected areas जो अच्छी सेटा कोथे basically manage करे गोटे core area और buffer model of management. तो core जोड़ा कि like highest level of protection जोड़ी किसी प्रकार activity allowed नहीं and तार side रे गोटे buffer zone. The core area has the legal status of being a national park. Generally, जो core area को national park ही करा जाए. कि जो buffer area doesn't have legal status of being a national park and could be reserved forest or wildlife sanctuary or tiger reserve. Basically generally जो core area को ही national park status दे दे अतः जो buffer area को either reserve forest status, wildlife sanctuary status or tiger reserve status दे दे. Okay, let's see what are the national parks in Odisha. So first वाला national park में देखते हो Similipal National Park, Similipal National Park 1980 established. एरिया कितने 845.7 डिस्ट्रिक्ट मयूरभंज. तो 845.7 स्क्वायर किलोमीटर जोड़ा कि लाइक जोड़ा हम देखो शिमिलीपाल वाइल्ड लाइफ सेंचुरी ला 1300 स्क्वायर किलोमीटर थिला अराउंड एंड बट इट इज बिकॉज़ ऑफ कोर एरिया इट इज लेसर 845.7 किलोमीटर स्क्वायर किलोमीटर. एस्टैब्लिश ईयर केवे 1980. भितरकनिका नेशनल पार्क 1998. भितरकनिका केवे 1998 रे 145 स्क्वायर किलोमीटर और केंद्रापड़ा डिस्ट्रिक्ट रे आछे. तो दीटा में देख लो 19टा वाइल्ड सेंचुरी देख लो और दीटा नेशनल पार्क देख लो. तो दीटा नेशनल पार्क सिमिलीपाल एंड और भितरकनिका established year गुला मन रखियो 1980 1998 1980 1998 okay Similipal Tiger Reserve established in 1956 बाकी जो प्रोजेक्ट टाइगर एस्टैब्लिश हुआ पर 1973 so it is one of the first one to come under project tiger 1956 established la kete area 2750 square kilometer Mayurbhanj district Mayurbhanj elephant reserve 2001 established Mayurbhanj elephant reserve area kete 3214 square kilometer Mayurbhanj Baleshwar Bhadrak and Kemshar एनी कहथि Mayurbhanj elephant reserve तीनटा एरिया को like गठित that is your Hadgad Wildlife Sanctuary, Kuldia Wildlife Sanctuary here, then your Similipal Tiger Reserve. Okay, ताको नहीं कि Mayurbhanj Elephant Reserve. Then Mahanadi Elephant Reserve 2002 रे established थीला 1038 square kilometer. Anugul, Cuttack, Nayagad, Kandhamal, Dhenkanal आछि. हैला डिस्ट्रिक्ट रे. तो Mahanadi Elephant Reserve को डिस्ट्रिक्ट अंडर आछि. Anugul जो पास करछ बेसिकली Mahanadi, Anugul, Cuttack, Nayagad, Kandhamal, Dhenkanal. Sambalpur Elephant Reserve that is also in 2002, 47 square kilometer area. Sambalpur, Sundargarh, and Jharsuguda. Satkosia Tiger Reserve 2007 established in 2007. Satkosia Tiger Reserve established 2007, 963 square kilometer, and district area Cuttack, Nayagad, Anugul, Board. Cuttack, Nayagad, Anugul, Board. Satkosia Tiger Reserve. So Mahanadi Elephant Reserve देखलो, Sambalpur Elephant Reserve देखलो, Satkosia Tiger Reserve. Similipal Tiger Reserve देखलो, then Satkosia 2007 आसला. Satkosia Gorge and Wildlife Sanctuary देखलो, सेठी Tiger Reserve गोटे रहला. So basically दुईटा national park गोटे छला, दुईटा Tiger Reserve and तीनटा Elephant Reserve, Mayurbhanj, Mahanadi, Sambalpur and गोटे ही Biosphere Reserve that is Similipal. केबे हेतला एटा 1994 रे. So 1994 रे it got the status of Biosphere Reserve Similipal. ता भीतर रहला गोटे Similipal Tiger Reserve, Similipal National Park, Similipal Wildlife Sanctuary. तो Similipal Tiger Reserve केबे हेतला 1956 रे. And Similipal Wildlife Sanctuary देखिलो हम Similipal National Park देखिलो 1980. So सबरो बेसिक एरिया कोड रहला Similipal Biosphere Reserve 4374 square kilometer. ना coming to Biosphere Reserve कौन basically large areas of protected land for conservation of wildlife, plant and animal resources and traditional life of tribals living in the area. तो जब ये देखिलो कि basically जो लेवल ऑफ प्रोटेक्शन नेशनल पार्क में बढ़ी बढ़ी आइतला बट जो ता पर स्टेटस दे बायोस्फीयर रिजर्व सेतरे बेसिकली कोन वाइल्ड लाइफ प्लांट एंड एनिमल रिसोर्सेज सहित जो सेटिका ट्रेडिशनल लाइफ ट्राइबल ताको भी प्रोटेक्टेड करा जाए सो बिकॉज़ कागज तो बड़ी इकोसिस्टम था सो मे हैव वन और मोर नेशनल पार्क्स और वाइल्ड लाइफ सेंचुरी इन इट तो बेसिकली बायोस्फीयर रिजर्व भितरे बहुत सारा नेशनल पार्क वाइल्ड लाइफ सेंचुरी भी रही पारे रिजर्व फॉरेस्ट एरिया कोर एरिया जोटा कोर एरिया जनरली तमर था नेशनल पार्क comprises a strictly protected ecosystem for conserving ecosystem species and genetic variation. तो पचार ये क्वेश्चन है सब तो को स्टेटस है सब हाईएस्ट लेवल ऑफ प्रोटेक्शन दिस दैट इज नेशनल पार्क. So generally in core or natural zone human activity is not allowed. Buffer zone used for scientific research, monitoring, training and education. So core zone or natural zone में human activity allowed no. Buffer zone used for what? Scientific research, monitoring, training and education. Buffer zone is used for scientific research, monitoring, training, and education. Transition area, ecologically sustainable human settlements and economic activities are permitted. So, core area देखलो कि किसी प्रकार human activity allowed no. Buffer zone किसी प्रकार research, training पर जो activities थोड़ा allowed होची. And ट्राप रे रहला जो eco sensitive zone और eco sensitive तो buffer zone को भी कहा जाए. Transition zone, सेठी किसी human settlements, ecologically sustainable हुआ दरकार रही पारियो. And economic activities also like tourism are permitted both at transition areas. Through the cooperation of reserve management and local people, several human activities are like settlements, cropping, recreation, and forestry are carried out without disturbing the environment. It's saying with the cooperation of what reserve management and local people, several human activities like settlement, cropping, recreation, forestry is without disturbing the environment. So they go transition area. देखलो कोर एरिया कोन परियो बफर जोन कोन परियो ट्रांजिशन एरिया कोन परियो ए तीनटा कोथरे थाय बायोस्फीयर रिजर्व पे देन टाइगर रिजर्व कोन दिखे दिया इट इज आल्सो सेम एज सैंक्चुरीज बट दे आर मॉनिटर्ड बाय एनटीसीए नेशनल टाइगर कंजर्वेशन अथॉरिटी अंडर प्रोजेक्ट टाइगर तो प्रोजेक्ट टाइगर बेस्ड था 1973 रहितला द वेरियस टाइगर रिजर्व्स वर क्रिएटेड इन द कंट्री बेस्ड ऑन कोर एंड बफर स्ट्रेटजी कोर एरियाज आर फ्रीड ऑफ ऑल ह्यूमन एक्टिविटीज कोर एरिया कोन इट इज फ्री फ्रॉम व्हाट ऑल ह्यूमन एक्टिविटीज it has the legal status of national park or wildlife sanctuary. So टाइगर रिजर्व जेनरली गोटे कोर एरिया होची जेटा कहूची कोन सेटे भी किछि प्रकार ह्यूमन एक्टिविटी अलाउड नो ताको जनरली नेशनल पार्क और वाइल्ड लाइफ सेंचुरी रो लीगल स्टेटस मिलता है collection of minor forest produce grazing other human disturbance are not allowed buffer area kind होची that data objective होची that is providing habitat supplement to spill over population of wild animals from core area suppose core area ru kiछि like spill over he jivo population basic production regular reproduction so that will come under the your buffer zone. Then provide site-specific co-developmental inputs to surrounding villages for relieving their impact on core area. So second objective is what? To provide site-specific co-developmental inputs to surrounding villages for relieving their impact on core area. Then collection of minor forest produce and grazing by tribals is allowed on sustainable basis. Fourth, buffer area. Then the Forest Rights Act. Forest Rights Act passed by the what? Indian government in 2006. Forest Rights Act passed by Indian government in 2006 recognizes the rights of some forest dwelling communities and forest areas. So this is very important parliamentary law act you can say Forest Rights Act. Conservation reserves, water conservation reserves. Conservation reserves can be declared by the state government in any area owned by the government, particularly the areas adjacent to national parks and sanctuaries, and those areas which link one protected area with another. So state government declare conservation reserve भाବରେ काहाकू any area owned by the government own करता दरकार हैला in particularly the areas adjacent to national park जो national park रो पाखापाखी area और sanctuary रो पाखापाखी area and those areas with one those areas which link one protected area with another generally एठी गोटे protected area अछि एठी गोटे protected area अछि बाकी मझा मझी किछि like अछि forest but that was तार किछि legal status नाही ताको conservation reserve भाବରେ we declare okay state government. Such declaration should be made after having consultation with the local communities. So local communities with the consultation की एवं declaration ही परिवार कोची then the rights of people living inside a conservation reserve are not affected. So sir conservation reserve जो होची ताको कुछ dislocation वगैरह होनी ताको सब rights conservation then community reserves. So after conservation reserve there is something called community reserves. So that can be also declared by the state government in any private and community land. Private land sorry so community reserves can declare by the state government in any private or community land सेठी थिला कि basically जो conservation reserve government land बाकी community reserve that can be private or community as well so it is not comprised within a national park sanctuary or a conservation reserve where an individual community has volunteered to conserve wildlife so basically community reserve माने किसी private individual मिसी कि किसी conservation करछन्ती so we can see the difference between conservation reserve and community reserve. So in case of conservation reserve, the rights of people living inside a community reserve are not affected. So it's very rights affected by none. Sacred groups. India has a history of religious and cultural traditions that emphasize the protection of nature. Many tracts of forests were set aside, and all the trees and wildlife within were venerated and given total protection. So both the generally tribals, the tribal areas, some sacred groups protect Karanti and worship Karanti. So such sacred groups are found in Khasi and Jaintia hills in Meghalaya, Aravali hills of Rajasthan, Western Ghat regions of Karnataka and Maharashtra, and the Sarguja, Chanda, and Bastar areas of Madhya Pradesh. In Meghalaya, the sacred groups are the last refuges for a large number of rare and threatened plants. So thank you. So take a boring here because my health is not good. Hello, excited so please make sure you remember this at least the national parks and all the wildlife sanctuaries in Odisha. Okay, so revise it this 2 slides 2-3 times, and this is it. So thank you so much. We'll stop here. Hare Krishna, Jai Jagannath.